experience of Christians under communism and then afterwards. I'll ask Valerio to say a few words about the making of the film, then we'll show the documentary, and then we'll have a brief discussion with Rod Dreher, who's worked in this area himself, and Valerio, and then have questions from the audience. So, do you want to say a couple of words?
Thank you. Thank you, Dave Jones, for this invitation. Just would like to briefly say a short introduction to the documentary. So, first of all, I would like to express my thanks to David Jones and to the Danube Institute for this opportunity to present for the screening and for the debate about the film, which is a travel. This film is a travel across Europe, this part of Europe, across 8 countries and 12 cities. And it is as well a travel journey across 3 different generations of scholars of religions who answer the question, do you feel free to study religion? That's the question they answer in this film. That's the question that the documentary try to answer. And they answer by addressing the issue of the scientific approach to the religion, and by addressing as well the issue of religion at large in Central and in Eastern Europe. The European Commission helped me support this project. Thanks to the European Commission, I was able to build up the project of the documentary within a scholarship, within a research program which is called Marie Curie. The Marie Curie program, which refers to the well-known Polish and French scientists, as a symbol, Marie Curie, of something of research, something of innovative and passionate. So please consider and watch this film by considering it not only an output of scientific research, and it is as well an output of scientific research, of science communication for religious studies, but consider it as well as part of something extremely meaningful for my life and for all the years that I have spent in Central and in Eastern Europe as a scholar of religion. And thank you, Rod Dreher, for being here to discuss the film. So I'm looking forward to it. And thank you to all of you for being here too.
Thank you. Can we show the film?
That was really quite interesting because I felt such a contrast with the work I've done on the similar topic here, because I didn't talk to scholars. I talked to, people who are activists or everyday people, but I really appreciated hearing what the scholars had to say about these things. I took some notes while I was watching. I used to be a professional film critic, so I know how to write in the dark. I listened to your subjects talk about religious studies under communism and in post-communism and the lack of freedom, academic freedom. I was thinking about how politicized the academy has become in the United States, even in the religious studies realm, and about the lack of freedom one has, even though it's not imposed by governments or by churches, but rather by ideological constraints within the academy. As a young Marxist scholar in America, Tyler Austin Harper, really interesting young writer. And he has written recently that the politicization from the left, by the left, of the humanities has alienated these fields of studies, including religious studies, from the wider population. And so now in times of budget cuts, religious studies and other fields of the humanities are not seen as something important for society. And what's fascinating to me about that, in contrast to what we saw in your film, is that, again, this is not coming from pressure from governments at all. It's coming from the disconnect between the scientific study of religion and other fields in the humanities, which have lost touch with the greater society. And the United States is, of course, a more religious society than over here. So I hope we can talk about that in a second. I saw that I was really interested in what one of your Czech interviewees had to say, that it is difficult to convince people today that science produces the best and only knowledge. I thought that was an astute observation, but it seemed almost old-fashioned in a way that he does believe that science produces the best and only knowledge. Because, we really do seem to be at a point when all forms of knowledge are contested. And I think it's a point of great instability, but I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. This man would disagree, and I want to know what your opinion is on it. But this sort of scientism that we have, the belief in science as an ideology, that it produces the best knowledge in all realms, is, I think, a real problem, especially when you're studying something like religion, which is very difficult to put, under a microscope and to dissect it, to try to understand it in that way. So I also greatly appreciated, as an Orthodox Christian, what the Ukrainians said about the struggle in Ukraine among Orthodox Christians in Ukraine about Russia, and about how I like how he protested against the idea that you should ban Russian scientists and Russian texts. You can't do that, or you shouldn't do that if you want to study religion. You don't have to like what the Russians are doing one bit, but it seems to me that if you're a scholar, you should be willing to even look at and listen to the words of people you dislike to try to understand. And it gets back to the sort of thing that I believe is hurting not only the humanities, but religious studies in particular in the United States, which is the heavy ideology that has, we call it woke ideology, the sort of identity politics of the left that has strongly come to dominate American academia. I've had people I know within conservatives within the academy tell me that as long as the old-fashioned 1960s liberals are in charge, they'll be more or less okay, because those people may be on the left, but they believe in free inquiry and open discussion. But the post-baby boomer left, people of my generation who are coming to power, are very intolerant of that, because they see scholarship itself as something that should be ideologically engaged. And I think that it is interesting to consider the point of view of these scholars coming out of the communist period, the struggles they're dealing with today, these regional scholars, with the experience in Western universities now, which seem to be going in the opposite direction towards becoming more ideological and less open to freedom, not from pressure from above, but from pressure from within, from student activists and from within these disciplines. There are some things that you can't discuss and you can't talk about because it would, in America, in religious studies, because it would immediately mark you out as someone suspicious. Finally, I was thinking, watching toward the end of your film, I was thinking about a case I know in the U.S. of some Russian Orthodox believers, Americans, but in the Russian church, in the state of West Virginia who welcomed a religious scholar to come study them. They're a community that lives around a monastery. And from what I understand, they're quite politically conservative and religiously conservative. She later wrote a book about them, and they felt betrayed by her. Now, I don't know, I'm not going to take sides here. I didn't read her book. I don't know whether they had a right to feel betrayed or not. It could simply be that she described them accurately, and they didn't like how they saw themselves in the book. But it's also the case that the ongoing politicization of the Academy and of American society, the polarization of American society, has made it, makes it more difficult for honest scholars to get inside these communities and to write about them and to study them, because more conservative traditional religious communities have learned to distrust scholars because they fear that the scholars will, and journalists too for that matter, they fear that scholars and journalists won't be fair to them, but are only coming to see them so they can learn what's wrong with you, where do you diverge from the official ideology that we prefer, and how can we make this public to punish you and pressure you. So this, I think, is going, these are part of the outside forces, the contemporary forces that are bringing new challenges and narrowing the field for religious studies in my country. And I appreciate seeing this film as someone who is new to this region. I appreciate hearing from scholars who are talking about it from their point of view. Can we talk about some of these issues? And I'd love to know why you chose to make a film about scholars when talking about the religious experience in Central Europe today.
Maybe now, yes. Yes, there are many issues in this idea to the point that you can find in the United States which are different, and there is something very interesting. And particularly, yes, we have this link of this Ukrainian scholar who is an emigre. He went to the University of Alabama before the war, and then he decided to stay there in the Department of Religious Studies. And then I had the opportunity as well to discuss with the head of the department, Russell McCutcheon, about how to involve him in the film. And I believe as well that his testimony is extremely important and even courageous to point out these aspects. The reason why I have maybe I will be back as well on this issue as well of the Russian issue. The reason why I decided to make this film is that the film is a project of science communication, and we have in this field of research, my field of research, and I have dedicated many years now to it. There is a kind of narrative of victimization, if you can say like this.
Could you repeat that?
Of victimization, because we feel, or many scholars in our field of research feel like the victim, that nobody understands us, or knows about what we are doing, or people, the larger public, but even the academia, they don't even suspect the existence of this field of research, and then that the scientific approach can be a thing. But it is a thing, even if it's a relatively new field of research, because it started, maybe I can say something about this, because actually the field of research is not well known. To introduce this field of research and the documentary as well. This field of research developed in the last decades of the 19th century, developed in the faculties of theology in order to improve the religious knowledge by using tools of the new sciences and new results of sciences like philology, archaeology, comparative history, different branches of ethnology and so on. And then it developed as well outside this network in more secular environment, like it was in France or in Italy, where the faculties of theology were abolished in Italy. That happened right after the Italian invasion of the Papal States of Rome. And then they established some chairs, for example, history of religions in the faculties of humanities. And it is still like this in Italy. And then we have as well an international community, which, it was established in 1900 in Paris during the Paris Expo, where they organized an international conference, a congress there of scholars of religions worldwide. And then since then, we have a congress every 4 or 5 years. And then I think that's a piece of information which will be useful for a better understanding of the documentary. This organization, after World War II, evolved into a new form of organization, the International Association for the History of Religion, the IAAJR, which was established within the CIPS, Conseil International de Philosophie et des Sciences Humaines, of the UNESCO. And this organization after World War II was made of scholars only from NATO countries. It was only slowly that few countries from the other side of the Iron Curtain tried to be a member of this organization, and Hungary succeeded in right after the revolution of 1956. And then as well, we had a Polish group representative of the country of Poland, but only in the 90s. And then only after the events of 89, 1991, all these countries, the countries of all these scholars, and all of them belong to this organization, or the IAJR, they started to create an organization and to join the IAJR, bringing together not only scholars, but as well different backgrounds and experiences. And now, in the IAJR, the statute of the IAJR, there is this only rule that in order to be a scholar of religion, the only thing that you cannot do is to be apologetic, meaning you cannot convert someone based on the results of your research. So for this experience of the IAJR and this statute, the problem of freedom is essentially a problem of being free from theology. Now, when the other scholars came into the IAJR, and we had at the time a kind of reunification of Europe, it was established a European Association for the Study of Religion within the IAJR. When they stepped in the International Association, they brought different ideas of freedom, because for them, freedom was framed differently. It was not only a problem of being free from theology, but it was mainly a problem of being free from ideology. And that's how this project came about. This is where I started, from these different concepts of freedom in the last decades of Europe.
So do you see within religious studies in Eastern and Central Europe, do you think that is the primary difference between the way the disciplines have developed in the post-communist years here versus in the West? That in the West, the religious studies scholars are pushing against theology, and here they're pushing more against the idea of ideology itself.
Yes, that was, I believe, right after the 89-91 events. It was like this, and we can see the debates at the time. There was a debate as well on the impact of the Cold War on the academic study of religions, and at the time the problem was like this. But since then, and that's the reason why this documentary provides new information and a new view on the situation, I believe that the problem is quite different today. As you can see, the situation is quite different, and we have different point of view about freedom and different way to frame freedom today. What really touched me deeply is that way of questioning the question itself, the question of freedom. So if I can maybe briefly go through the documentary, maybe to give you my point of view very briefly. At the beginning of the film, we have a very clear memory of freedom, and it is very well shared. So the documentary starts like this. So I was born in the Soviet Union, and we know what kind of system it was, the state-sponsored atheism. And then they describe the situation very clearly. So we were forced to study scientific atheism, and there was this idea that religion should disappear from the consciousness of Soviet people. So this is very clear. But then there is a catch in the beginning of the first act. If we can imagine the documentary as I did when I was writing the script as a three-act drama, there is a catch, because the more the protagonists delve in their memories, and the more struggling are these ideas of freedom. And then it brings to what in screenwriting jargon they call it a point of no return. So a point of no return. So which push the story forward. And then we have these new lines, like, for example, nothing really happened, or I've never witnessed this kind of events, or even we were able to orientate and to feel free. So you have a new perception and new memories of freedom in the past. There is a conflict in somehow, a conflict of memories and a conflict escalation, which brings the story to move forward in a way. To a point that is where the protagonists start to question the freedom today, and it's a sort of a moment of all this lost moment in Act 2. So I wonder if the new generation have still this question, even, or freedom is a makeup, or about the enigmatic types of freedom after the 1989 revolution in Romania. And this is really the point of a strong conflict of memories in Act 2. But then there is a resolution somehow, what we can call maybe a beauty in the struggle, or maybe a learn a lesson moment. Because at this point, the protagonists start to reframe the question of freedom. So the problem is no more if we have freedom or if we are not free, but the problem is what freedom is itself. And that's an extraordinary new way of reframing the problem. And then we have these lines. So freedom is a tricky term, or freedom is not binary. And we have even the bottom line concerning the unlimited version of freedom. And we reach somehow a resolution of the conflict, or at least the resolving movement arc covers all the memories of freedom. And what I find extraordinary in all these testimonies is that at the end of the story and of the storytelling, the protagonists in somehow reach their goal to be free, but not only in external sense, but really in essence, by questioning at the end the question itself. And that's, I think, that's the extraordinary arc story of the film.
One of the things that I missed in the film, though, is a sense of how their struggle academically related to the changing nature of religion in post-communist society. They did say that, more and more people are falling away from religion. Poland has been an outlier, but now it is starting very quickly to catch up with the rest of the region. Do you see within the field of religious studies here that it's becoming more and more difficult for scholars to stay relevant as religion fades away from being central to national life?
Today? Yeah. Well, about the position of religion, if I understand well.
No, my question is, as religion itself, the practice of religion by ordinary people fades from importance in national life, how does that affect the work that religious studies scholars do? In other words, how do they stay relevant to the times and responsible to the times and the broader community when religion itself seems to be fading away?
Well, I think that my field of research is part of this process of fading, or maybe we can call it of secularization. And it's a paradoxical field of research because it's part of the process, but at the same time, it means to stay in the process of fading and not to go out of this process. So it's kind of never-ending process of fading and of secularization. That's the paradox of my field of research.
Go ahead.
And well, there is, maybe you refer of the result of one of the interview is maybe Rostad saying that there is secularization in Hungary today, and Christianity in Hungary today, but that's not exactly a problem for this kind of field of research, in the sense that we just study the religion, and well, I understand that it's a complex. The origin of the discipline is very complicated because actually it moves well in some secular networks. Like in Italy, for instance, I was recalling this fact that it's only after the fall of the Papal States that in Italy we start these chairs of history of religions. So maybe, yes, I understand your question, that it's a paradox because in this situation of secularization, this field of research is not that's not the end of the field of research itself.
You know, one of the scholars on the film was sorry that church leaders don't pay more attention to the work that scholars do. Can you talk a little bit about that, about what church leaders could learn from the field of religious studies?
Well, but we can give, of course, different answers. Maybe I don't know how all this interview would answer, but in my way, I believe that secularization is not something that move against religion. I believe that secularization could be considered even a religious phenomenon. But that's, of course, my point of view. So I cannot see the secularization, the fading of religion, if any, today, as something that will put an end to the field of research. But we have different tendencies in this field of research. We have as well scholars who ask to change the name itself of religious studies, of the academic study of religion, something like worldview. So if there is a movement which try to be free from theology, there is even, but that's very extreme, a tendency to be free from religion itself. So we have that. Yeah,
I can believe it, but that's an example to me of what this young Marxist I mentioned, Tyler Harper, was saying about how humanities scholars dig their own professional graves by becoming so separate from the actual lives of the broader community. It's like they get into an academic bubble and they forget that they're supposed to be responsible in some sense to the larger community.
Yes, for me it makes no sense to abandon, to reject the term religion. It makes no sense. We should, maybe they say, because religion is as an imprint, Western imprinting, but we should at this point give up with the old culture, not only with religion, with all the categories we think, and we cannot think outside these categories. And maybe without religion, we will not even able to think the otherness, because that's one of the best category that we had to have a view around the world and to think that the world as a plural world with different identities. So I think that we can do that thanks to the category of religion. We should, of course, have maybe an attitude of examination that should be very challenging for religion itself. But I believe that the category of religion is ready to be challenged at all times, and it will continue to be. And the field of research in that way, that's the best goal that it could have today. David, do you have something?
Yeah, I liked your idea of the arc of the story, that you said it starts with the communist experience and the sense that, if you were religious under a communist regime, then freedom was kind of real in the sense that you knew you were being subjected to this this system that struck your belief system as being outrageous, and so you were forced into an atheistic mindset. And if you rejected it, it became, you got a sense of freedom from that. And then the as you say, the story that moves on is that after 89, there's a kind of growing sense of, what does it mean to be free? And then the last part seems to be, freedom's changed, but in a sense, all the scholars you were, interviewing, or a lot of them, seem to just sort of get lost in a postmodernist sort of deconstruction of everything, rather than saying, well, maybe there is still something central in religion that gives us what was historically a sense of freedom in the West. And so I found some of the positions articulated as at the end, or that you say paradoxical, I found them quite depressing in some ways.
Yeah, I see your point. But there is another turning, and that what really touched me the most. Really at the beginning, if we can talk again about this arc story, at the beginning we had we start with the consideration of the persecution of churches and of religious people, for instance, by atheist governments in the Soviet time. And then we end up at the end of the film with some consideration about the persecution of the atheists, like the new problem today by Islamic countries. Or we start with by saying it, by making it clear that religious people and churches were sent at the time, the Soviet time, or centers for anti-Soviet resistance. They were perceived as a seat of freedom, and they all remember how much they contributed to the freedom in that year. But eventually, as the Polish scholar Lech Członkowski remember, then eventually the church are perceived as a source of repression, and he described it as a paradox, maybe a depressing paradox, or even they change even the opposition to Russia. I mean, the memories of freedom in that sense. Russia at the beginning as a champion of atheism, and then at the end they oppose Russia as a champion of the Christian Orthodox Church, at least to that church of Patriarch Kirill of Moscow. So this kind of reversal of overturning are really what touched me and impressed me the most. And yes, it's quite shaky, and it's maybe yes, there is a kind of deconstruction of the problem. They are trying to find a solution many times in that direction. It's true.
Thank you. To the audience?
Yeah. Can we have? We're getting on a bit, but we could have time for a couple of questions. Good. Yeah.
Got that? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Hi. Thank you. My question actually is related a bit to what David just said. I was watching all of these very clever academics talking about the church and structures in communism, and I didn't get a feeling from any of them that they had any religious faith. It was entirely scientific, not scientific atheism, but scientific Christianity. And I don't know whether I just missed something, or whether for them it was just a matter of structures, and structures which you can now embrace and you couldn't under communism. But there was no credo, there was no I believe in there, not even a feeling of it. Why is that?
Well, it's true, and it was very surprising for me as well. So, when I started the project of the film, I was wondering how to make the questions. And I had to stick with the data regulation protection of the European Council, in which they asked to be careful with the sensitive and personal data. And among them, that includes as well your religious, philosophical, and political position. Those are personal sensitive data. So we should be careful in using that. So my idea, in order to stick to this regulation, was not to ask anything about their position, religious position, political position. So they were absolutely free to say something about this. And the result is that they didn't. Really, in a few cases, they say, maybe I was thinking to become a priest, but then for some reasons I didn't. Well, I filmed something like 720 minutes, so it's only a short part. But it's true, that's impressive, that nobody thought about their religious position and faith. And that's, I believe that it's a result of the field of research, when it doesn't matter your faith, but only your investigation. That's the part of the religious studies which developed more in a secular environment. Probably all of them belong to this network of the international associations of the UNESCO. That's why. Certainly, if we go and we make the same interview with people from faculties of theology, we will have a very different result. So it's maybe more where I put my camera. Yes,
but very, very quickly, thank you for that question, because you made it clear something I struggled with in the film. It said I didn't have much sympathy for any of these people. And it wasn't that they were bad people. It's just that I didn't get the feeling that they had any real passion for the subject. And as Valerio says, maybe they chose to present themselves that way because they are scholars. Yet, my field of investigation as a journalist in the area of religion in this region has been talking to people who went to prison for being Catholic or Protestant or Christian in some way, and who are activists. And so they had real skin in the game. So it was kind of jarring for me to see academics speak so bloodlessly about the topic, even though I agree that it's appropriate as an academic to have a certain amount of reserve.
Adam, do you want to say with that? Adam Tarabos, who's...
Yeah, thank you very much. I just would like to add something to this dispute, because I know some of those who were asked personally, and I think it's not about the fact that they are not enthusiastic or not religious. I think they are. It's just they are scholars. And if you ask scholars about their scholarship, they are going to answer as a scholar. And I think that's all. So they can decide which phase they use in their profession. And I would like to have a question, and I think Rod also touched upon this question. One of the Hungarian respondents argued that now the problem is that not only the community leaders, but Christian communities don't really listen to these scholars. And maybe you would have an answer for the question that what maybe you or other scholars of religion could do to improve that relationship between the religious community and those scholars of religion.
Yes, I think that the problem is even bigger. That in this case, because the Rosta Gergely, which is a professor of sociology of religions, he works in a Catholic university, but most of them they work in public university. They are no affiliated they are not affiliated to churches. But the problem sometimes is that our results, it's not only the representative of the church, but even the secular environment, they don't read our results. Or they don't consider the work that we are doing, meaning that to keep the problem of religion in faculties of humanities. And I would like to say that there is a great passion in that attempt to keep the problem of religion in the faculties of humanities. That the problem is that having this different context, which is not a religious context, is not a faculty of theology, when the problem of religion is not, you don't have to sometimes we have to apologize because we still study religion, and we have to explain to them why a religion is still a problem, can be still a problem in a secular society, and even a society which is involved in a process of secularization. So the problem is, what can we do to do this? I think that we should try to explain what we are doing. So I don't know what the other people, my field of research, are doing. Actually, in the University of Alabama, which is the only one in the United States where we have a scholar, they are trying to be more open to society, even if that can be even a problem, because in this case we have this new project of science for societies, which maybe is very complicated. But I think that, for example, making a documentary and try to reach out with the general public is a way. I mean, the message and what we are doing, we have to explain it first to the general public, and then churches, and then maybe a government, or even a dean of a university of humanities can listen to us. So the problem is not to go right to the churches, but try to explain what we are doing with the general public. And that's the reason why I've made this documentary.
Do you want to? Okay, well, it's actually too late now. We've been told the place is going to close down in a couple of minutes. So can we thank Valerio for his splendid documentary, which raised a lot of questions, and Rod for his interrogation, which was very forensic. And if anybody's got further questions, I'm sure Valerio would be pleased to answer them. And thank you for the questions that we had, and it raised more issues than I suspected it would in terms of where we move on in this debate. So thank you all for coming, and thank you to our speaker and respondent.
Thank you all.